On April 23, 2025, David Anthony Burke was 20 years old, had nearly 4 million followers on TikTok, had just performed at Coachella, and was 2 days away from releasing his debut album. Under the name D4vd, he was becoming one of the fastest rising young artists on the internet. That same day, prosecutors say a 14-year-old girl named Celeste Rivas Hernandez went to his home in the Hollywood Hills. She was never seen again. 5 months later, Los Angeles authorities impounded an abandoned Tesla registered to Burke. Inside the front trunk, investigators found human remains. The remains were decomposed, dismembered, sealed inside bags in the front trunk of a car connected to a viral music star whose songs about heartbreak had been streamed hundreds of millions of times. The remains were identified as Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She was 14 years old. Investigators say the relationship between Burke and Celeste had been hidden for years. Before she disappeared, she had been photographed backstage at his Los Angeles shows. She had been inside his circle long before anyone realized what prosecutors now allege was happening behind closed doors. Then investigators recovered text messages from the night Celeste allegedly died. According to prosecutors, Celeste threatened to expose the relationship, to tell people what had been happening, to destroy Burke's career. Prosecutors believe that is why she was killed. On April 20th, 2026, David Burke was arraigned in Los Angeles on charges including first-degree murder with special circumstances, continuous sexual abuse of a child, and mutilation of human remains. Prosecutors said the death penalty was under consideration. His attorneys responded with a single statement. The actual evidence in this case will show that David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and he was not the cause of her death. The preliminary hearing is scheduled for June 29th. Tonight, the complete case. Tonight, the complete case. The hidden relationship. The final text messages. The missing person investigation. The abandoned Tesla. The remains found inside the trunk. The passport card discovered beside a California highway. The grand jury investigation that lasted nearly a year. The prosecution's theory. The defense's response. And the evidence prosecutors believe turned a rising music career into a murder case. Every crime leaves a record. Tonight, we read it. And if you enjoy deeply researched true crime stories built entirely around the evidence, subscribe to the Guilt Ledger and turn on notifications so you never miss another case. Before the Tesla and the grand jury and the courtroom, there was a 14-year-old girl. And this script will not move past her quickly. She is the reason this ledger exists. Celeste Abigail Rivas Hernandez was born in 2011. She was from Lake Elsinore in Riverside County, California, a community about 70 miles southeast of Los Angeles. She was 14 years old when she died. She was 13 when prosecutors say the sexual abuse began. She was 11 years old when she and David Burke first met, according to prosecutors. 11. CNN described her photographs as showing a teenager with thick, dark curls that highlighted her soft smile. Those photographs, published by her family and by news organizations as missing persons images, are the images of a child. An ordinary California teenager with her whole life ahead of her. The kind of photographs that parents take because the world is supposed to be safe enough for their children to grow into it. She was reported missing on April 5, 2024, when she was 13 years old. Her family filed the report. She had vanished. For more than a year, while her family searched for her, she had already been dead, according to prosecutors. Her remains would not be found for 17 months after she was reported missing. During those 17 months, her passport card was found by a Caltrans worker off State Route 154 in Santa Barbara County in January 2026. Prosecutors say David Burke had repeatedly visited an isolated site off that same highway after allegedly killing her, a site near Lake Cachuma. Her passport, in an isolated location, that a music star had visited multiple times after she disappeared. She had been photographed backstage at one of D4vd's Los Angeles shows in June 2024, 2 months after she was reported missing and nearly a full year before her remains would be found. Photographs of a missing 13-year-old girl at a concert, backstage, with the man prosecutors say had been sexually abusing her since she was 13, and would kill her at 14. Her family has not made extensive public statements through media since the charges were filed. Their grief is documented only in the photographs they shared. A girl with dark curls and a soft smile. And in the missing persons report filed on April 5, 2024, that began the investigation that ended in a Los Angeles courtroom on April 20, 2026. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was 14 years old. She was from Lake Elsinore. She had dark curls and a soft smile. She went to a house in the Hollywood Hills on April 23, 2025. She was never heard from again. That is the entry this ledger begins with. And it is the entry this ledger closes on. She had been photographed backstage at one of D4vd's Los Angeles shows in June 2024, 2 months after she was reported missing and nearly a full year before her remains would be found. Photographs of a missing 13-year-old girl at a concert. Backstage. With the man prosecutors say had been sexually abusing her since she was 13 and would kill her at 14. Her family has not made extensive public statements through media since the charges were filed. Their grief is documented only in the photographs they shared. A girl with dark curls and a soft smile. And in the missing persons report filed on April 5, 2024, that began the investigation that ended in a Los Angeles courtroom on April 20, 2026. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was 14 years old. She was from Lake Elsinore. She had dark curls and a soft smile. She went to a house in the Hollywood Hills on April 23, 2025. She was never heard from again. That is the entry this ledger begins with. And it is the entry this ledger closes on. David Anthony Burke was born in 2004 in Houston, Texas. He grew up in a religious household. His father, David Burke, is a pastor. He began making music on GarageBand as a teenager. He did not have professional recording equipment. He recorded in a closet. He uploaded songs to TikTok. And in 2022, when he was 17 years old, one of those songs changed everything. The song was called Romantic Homicide. It went viral on TikTok. It reached number 4 on Billboard's Hot Rock and Alternative Songs chart. A teenager in a closet with GarageBand had produced a genuine chart hit. He signed with Darkroom and Interscope Records, major label infrastructure behind one of the most organic TikTok music success stories of the era. He released his debut EP Petals to Thorns and a follow-up The Lost Petals in 2023. He performed at major festivals. He performed at Coachella in April 2025, 3 days before prosecutors say he killed Celeste Rivas Hernandez. His music reached hundreds of millions of streams. His TikTok following grew to nearly 4 million. He was, by every music industry measure, one of the most promising young artists of his generation. His sound, described as a blend of indie rock, R&B, and lo-fi pop, appealed directly to the Gen Z audience that discovered him the same way they discovered everything else. Through a phone, through a short video, through an algorithm that served his music to people who did not know his name yet and made them feel like they did. That audience, the millions of people who followed him, streamed his music, watched his videos, attended his shows, is the audience that prosecutors say he killed to protect. Not abstractly. Specifically, the text messages obtained by investigators from the night of April 23, 2025 show that Celeste Rivas Hernandez confronted Burke. She threatened to disclose damaging information about their relationship. She threatened to end his career and destroy his life. Prosecutors say he killed her within hours of receiving those messages. His family has been consistent and vocal throughout. His parents, Colleen and David Burke, initially fought subpoenas to testify before the Los Angeles grand jury, filing petitions in Texas where they live to avoid appearing. A Texas appeals court denied the petition on February 13, 2026. They were required to comply. His parents sat in a Texas court and fought to protect their son from a grand jury that was examining whether he murdered a 14-year-old girl. His attorneys Blair Burke and Marilyn Bednarski have maintained his innocence from the day of his arraignment. They have said the evidence will show he did not murder Celeste and was not the cause of her death. They have said they will vigorously defend him. David Burke is 21 years old. He is in custody in Los Angeles. His preliminary hearing is June 29. Prosecutors say David Burke and Celeste Rivas Hernandez first met when she was 11 years old. He was 16 at the time. That detail is not background context. It is the foundation of the prosecution's entire case, and it belongs in this ledger exactly as stated. 11 years old when they met, 16 when he met her. The criminal complaint alleges that beginning in September 2023, when Celeste was 13 and Burke was 18, he began sexually abusing her. The charge of continuous sexual abuse of a child covers the period prosecutors allege the abuse ran, from September 2023 to September 2024. 1 full year. A 13-year-old girl being sexually abused for 1 year by a man who was by then an adult, signed to a major record label, performing at festivals, building a career that was growing larger every month. During this period, Celeste was photographed at his shows. She was backstage in June 2024. These are photographs of a girl who was, according to prosecutors, being continuously abused by the man whose name was on the backstage pass. The photographs exist. They have been published by news organizations. They show an ordinary-looking teenager in a concert environment. They are also photographs of a victim. She was reported missing in April 2024, while the alleged abuse was still ongoing according to the timeline prosecutors provided. She was 13 when the missing persons report was filed. Her family was looking for her. And according to prosecutors, she was still alive at that point, still in contact with Burke in some form, because she would not go to his Hollywood Hills home until April 23, 2025, 13 months after she was reported missing. Her family had been searching for her for over a year before she went to that house. The text messages from the night of April 23, 2025, obtained by investigators and described in the criminal complaint, show what happened in the final hours. Celeste confronted Burke. She told him she was going to expose the relationship. She told him she was going to release damaging information. She threatened to end his career. Prosecutors say his response to those messages was not to negotiate. It was not to beg for silence. It was not to flee. Prosecutors say his response was to kill her. The motive prosecutors have described is specific and documented. Not a crime of passion. Not an argument that escalated beyond control. A calculation. A man with 4 million TikTok followers and a career ascending looked at a 14-year-old girl who threatened to take all of it away. And prosecutors say he decided she was the variable that needed to be removed. Career. Fame. Silence. At the cost of a child's life. On September 8, 2025, 5 months after Celeste Rivas Hernandez went to the Hollywood Hills house and was never heard from again, workers at a vehicle impound lot in Los Angeles made a discovery that broke the case open. An abandoned Tesla had been towed to the impound lot. The vehicle's registration was traced to David Anthony Burke. When workers opened the front trunk of the vehicle, the storage compartment in the front of an electric vehicle where a conventional car would have an engine, they found human remains. The remains were in 2 bags. They were decomposed. The Los Angeles Police Department's Robbery Homicide Division was called immediately. The medical examiner's office determined that the remains had likely been in the vehicle for several weeks before discovery, which means the body had been in the Tesla for weeks, while David Burke continued his life. Coachella was April 20th. Prosecutors say the killing was April 23rd. The Tesla was found September 8th. Between April 23rd and September 8th, 138 days, David Burke performed at venues, appeared on social media, attended industry events, and maintained a public profile as a rising music star, while the body of Celeste Rivas Hernandez was in the front trunk of his car. The LAPD quickly linked the vehicle to its registered owner. The investigation that had been opened when Celeste was reported missing in April 2024, over a year before her body was found, was now a murder investigation with physical remains and a registered owner. The medical examiner issued the official ruling in December 2025. The cause of death was 2 penetrating wounds to the torso with smooth edges that may represent sharp, forced injuries. The manner of death was homicide. 2 penetrating injuries. Sharp instrument. Torso. That is what the official record says about how Celeste Rivas Hernandez died. The charges include mutilation of human remains, because prosecutors say the dismemberment was deliberate. A chainsaw is referenced in court documents as the alleged instrument of dismemberment. The prosecution's theory is that Burke killed her in his Hollywood Hills home on April 23, 2025, 2 days before his debut album was released, then drove to the Santa Barbara area and disposed of evidence near Lake Cachuma off Highway 154. Her passport card was found by a Caltrans worker off that same highway in January 2026. Prosecutors say he had repeatedly visited that isolated site after the killing. The Tesla, the frunk, 2 bags, a decomposed and dismembered 14-year-old girl, found 5 months after she went to a house and was never heard from again, in a car registered to the man she had threatened to expose. This is what the physical record says. This is what a Los Angeles grand jury heard in secret before recommending criminal charges. The path from the discovery of remains in September 2025 to the charges filed in April 2026 was not a straight line. It was 7 months of a secret grand jury process, family subpoenas, cross-state legal battles, and a medical examiner who was blocked by the LAPD from publicly releasing death details while the investigation was ongoing. In November 2025, 2 months after the remains were found, the Los Angeles Times reported that the Los Angeles County District Attorney had impaneled an investigative grand jury. A secret process. Ordinary citizens hearing evidence in private. No public testimony. No media access. The purpose of that grand jury was to determine whether the evidence supported criminal charges against David Burke. On January 15, 2026, D4vd's parents Colleen and David Burke were subpoenaed to testify before that grand jury in Los Angeles. His family received subpoenas from the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office stating that prosecutors believe their son may be involved in foul play related to Celeste's death. His parents did not want to testify against their son. They filed petitions in Texas, where they live, challenging the subpoenas on due process grounds. A Texas appeals court denied their petition on February 13, 2026. They were required to comply. In February 2026, public court documents obtained by ABC 7 Eyewitness News confirmed for the first time that D4vd was officially the target of the investigation for potential murder charges. The documents listed the target as David Burke, the potential charge as 1 count of murder. The documents also detailed for the first time in public the dismemberment, body parts found in 2 bags in the vehicle's front trunk. On April 17, 2026, David Burke was arrested. On April 20th, he was arraigned at the Clara Shortridge Faults Criminal Justice Center in Los Angeles. He looked on from behind his defense attorney Marilyn Bednarski as District Attorney Nathan Hochman told reporters the specific charges. First-degree murder with special circumstances, 3 counts total. Continuous sexual abuse of a child. Use of a deadly weapon. Mutilation of human remains. Hochman stood at a podium next to a large photograph of Celeste Rivas Hernandez and said, "There is physical evidence, and there is forensic and digital evidence that we intend to present in court to prove these charges beyond a reasonable doubt." He said the death penalty was being considered. The charges carry the possibility of execution in the state of California. A 21-year-old TikTok star who recorded songs in a closet on GarageBand is looking at the possibility of lethal injection for the murder of a child he met when she was 11 years old. He pleaded not guilty. His attorneys said the evidence would show he is innocent. David Burke has maintained his innocence from the moment of his arraignment, and his defense team has built a public posture around that claim with specific and deliberate language. Understanding what the defense is arguing and what they are not arguing is essential to understanding what June 29th's preliminary hearing will actually determine. The defense's public position is absolute. Blair Burke and Marilyn Bednarski, both experienced criminal defense attorneys with significant high-profile case histories in Los Angeles, have said in every public statement that the evidence will show David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez and was not the cause of her death. They did not say he was elsewhere. They did not say he never knew her. They said the evidence will show he was not the cause of her death. That specific phrasing, not the cause of her death, is a legal construction that leaves room for a defense theory that she died by other means. The defense has not publicly articulated what those other means might be. The preliminary hearing on June 29th, which has been delayed multiple times, most recently because Burke's attorneys said they needed more time to review the voluminous evidence, will begin to reveal what the defense intends to argue. At a court status conference on May 12, 2026, when the hearing was pushed from May 26 to June 29, D4vd was present in the courtroom. When asked whether he consented to the delay, he replied, "Yes, Your Honor." Those are the only words David Burke has spoken publicly in any court proceeding so far. The defense's strategy around the evidence is significant. They specifically requested additional time to review what prosecutors describe as voluminous evidence, meaning the physical evidence from the Tesla, the forensic evidence from the Hollywood Hills property, the digital evidence from text messages and devices, and potentially the testimony that was heard before the grand jury. A defense team that asks for time to review voluminous evidence is a defense team preparing to challenge specific pieces of that evidence in court. The preliminary hearing is not a trial. It is the hearing at which a judge will determine whether there is sufficient evidence to require David Burke to stand trial. If the judge finds sufficient evidence, the case moves to trial. If not, the charges can be dismissed. Given the physical evidence described in the criminal complaint, the remains in the Tesla, the text messages, the passport card, the dismemberment charges, the probability that the case does not survive the preliminary hearing is considered low by legal analysts who have reviewed the public filings. But the defense has not yet made its full argument. That argument begins June 29th. The charges against David Burke arrived into the specific world that created him, the Gen Z music ecosystem of TikTok, streaming platforms, and the festival circuit, with a force that world was not prepared for. Understanding how the music industry and his audience have responded to these charges is part of the complete ledger of this case. D4vd's music went viral precisely because it resonated with a generation that discovered artists through 15-second clips on phones. Romantic Homicide, the song that made him, charted because millions of teenagers and young adults connected with it. His audience was young. His audience was the same demographic as Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Some of his followers were approximately her age when she allegedly began being abused. Darkroom and Interscope Records, the labels that signed him, have not made extensive public statements about the charges as of this recording. His music remains on streaming platforms. His social media presence has gone silent since his arrest. His nearly 4 million TikTok followers have not been formally addressed by either Burke or his representatives beyond the legal statements from his attorneys. The comment sections and social media responses to the charges have reflected the division that tends to accompany celebrity criminal cases. Some followers refusing to believe the allegations, others expressing grief and anger, others processing what it means that an artist whose music they loved may have done what prosecutors allege. The phrase romantic homicide, the title of the song that made him famous, has taken on a meaning in news coverage of this case that its lyrics did not carry when the song was written. What the music industry response to these charges reveals is something that goes beyond this specific case. The machinery that makes stars in the digital era, the algorithm, the viral moment, the label deal, the festival booking, operates at a speed that does not allow for background checks on the people it elevates. A 17-year-old in a closet with GarageBand becomes a festival headliner in 3 years. The people around him during those 3 years, the ones who allegedly enabled or ignored or failed to investigate what was happening, are also part of this story. The criminal complaint names Burke's manager in connection with the investigation. That detail, a manager identified as a suspect alongside the artist, suggests the prosecution's view of this case extends beyond one person in a Hollywood Hills home on one night. What the industry knew. What the industry should have known. What a 14-year-old girl with dark curls and a soft smile was experiencing backstage at a show where thousands of people were dancing to the music of the man prosecutors say killed her. That is the question this case leaves open for an industry that has not yet fully answered it. As of May 20th, 2026, the David Burke case is in the 5-week window between the most recent court status conference and the next significant hearing. Here is exactly where every thread of this investigation and prosecution stands right now. David Burke is in custody in Los Angeles. He has been in custody since his arrest on April 17, 2026. He has not been released on bail. In a case carrying first-degree murder with special circumstances charges and a potential death penalty, bail was not granted. He is awaiting his preliminary hearing in a Los Angeles detention facility. The preliminary hearing is currently scheduled for June 29, 2026. The hearing was originally set for May 1st. It was pushed to May 26th, then pushed again to June 29th after his defense attorneys told the court on May 12th that they needed more time to review the voluminous evidence. A status conference is set for June 17th, 12 days before the preliminary hearing, at which any further developments will be addressed. The preliminary hearing itself will take place over multiple days. The judge has acknowledged this in scheduling orders. A multi-day preliminary hearing means the prosecution is presenting significant evidence, physical, forensic, digital, and potentially witness testimony, and the defense will have the opportunity to cross-examine witnesses and challenge the sufficiency of each piece. Whatever is presented at that hearing will be the first public detailed account of the prosecution's full evidence case. The DA's office has confirmed it has not yet decided whether to seek the death penalty. That decision will be made formally before trial if the case survives the preliminary hearing. The special circumstances attached to the first-degree murder charge, which include killing to prevent testimony or the disclosure of information, are the legal basis for death penalty eligibility in this case. A follow-up status conference has been set for June 17th. The June 29th preliminary hearing is the next major event. After that hearing, if the judge finds sufficient evidence, a trial date will be set. Trial in a case of this complexity and evidence volume could be months or years away from the June 29th hearing. Celeste Rivas Hernandez's family has not made extensive public statements since the charges were filed. Her photograph, published when she was reported missing, remains the image the world knows her by. Dark curls, a soft smile. A 14-year-old girl from Lake Elsinore, California, who was reported missing when she was 13 and whose remains were found in a Tesla 5 months after she went to a Hollywood Hills house and was never heard from again. The preliminary hearing is June 29th. The guilt ledger will cover every development the moment it happens. Here is what the ledger of David Burke says when you read every page of it. It says that a 17-year-old in Houston, Texas recorded songs in a closet and put them on TikTok and became famous. That millions of people connected with his music. That a major record label signed him. That he performed at Coachella. That he had nearly 4 million followers. That he was, by every external measure of the music industry, becoming something extraordinary. It says that when he was 16 years old, he met a girl who was 11. That prosecutors say, when he was 18, he began abusing her. That the abuse ran for a year. That she was 13 when it started. That she was photographed backstage at his concert. That she was 14 years old when she went to his house in the Hollywood Hills on April 23, 2025, 2 days before his debut album was released, and was never heard from again. It says that her remains were found in the front trunk of his car 5 months later. That she had been dismembered. That the medical examiner ruled her death a homicide from 2 penetrating wounds. That her passport card was found off a California highway near a site prosecutors say he visited repeatedly after she died. That the text messages from the night she died show her threatening to expose everything. And that prosecutors say his response was to kill her. It says that he stood in a Los Angeles courtroom on April 20th, 2026, and pleaded not guilty. That his attorneys say the evidence will show he did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez. That the preliminary hearing is June 29th and will begin to show what the evidence actually says. It says that he stood in a Los Angeles courtroom on April 20th, 2026, and pleaded not guilty. That his attorneys say the evidence will show he did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez. That the preliminary hearing is June 29th and will begin to show what the evidence actually says. And it says this, the entry that belongs at the center of every conversation about this case, and that no court date and no preliminary hearing will change. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was 14 years old. She was from Lake Elsinore, California. She had dark curls and a soft smile. She was reported missing when she was 13 by a family that was searching for her. She was found in a car. She deserved everything that 14 should have led to. The preliminary hearing is June 29th. The guilt ledger will be there for every word of it. Subscribe. Turn on every notification. This case is just beginning.